crop establishment, ask questions, and get answers. Real quick, you know, a little background behind the Buffalo Trempealeau Farmer Network. Back in 2016, is the far back as my history goes with the group, it was about 6 or 7 farmers in the local area. They got together just with the interest of sharing ideas and best management practices, not only for cover crops, but just for farming in general. It was a partnership with UW Discovery Farms that came on board to look at nitrogen use efficiency and how, you know, nitrogen, what the return on investment of nitrogen is on specific farms. So they went through for the next 3 years, kind of evaluating nitrogen and what that looks like on each farm. Throughout that process, it was cover crop conversations were happening, and methodologies and establishment techniques were being discussed, kind of fine tuning. And then, so this past year, I came on board. So my name is Scott Stipetich. I'm a precision ag and conservation specialist with Pheasants Forever. So I joined the group as a collaborator with the idea of, again, kind of hammering down on that return on investment on the farm. So looking at more than just nitrogen, but whole field applications, just layering inputs. So everything that goes into growing a crop and everything that you get revenue-wise coming off as yield. And then kind of looking at the fields and deciding sub-field, you know, are there areas that we could do something different to make more money? So again, cover crops continue through, and that's what brings us today. If you're interested in the profitability side of things, I'm happy to talk kind of on the side. Don't hesitate to get a hold of me. So again, what we're here to do today, you know, we have multiple pieces of equipment that came, a lot of folks to thank. You know, first of all, thanks to Ed and Darren Malashevsky, whose farm we're on today, Malashevsky Dairy. You know, the Buffalo Trempealeau Farmer Network group. You know, if you're a member of that group, if you would raise your hand, you know, just so people can recognize, you know, if you wanted to get involved in this group, it's a no-cost membership. You know, again, just for sharing ideas. We do have a message board, you know, that they trade information on. So if you're interested, again, it was those people that raised their hand, myself, Amber Raditz is here as well from UW Discovery Farms. Just get a hold of them and join that message board, I would say. So other folks to thank, you know, we have 2 kind of special guest speakers today. Matt Omican of Short Lane Ag. Where is he at? He's digging pits for us. So thank you, Matt. We'll hear from him in a little bit later. And then Gary Fenig, who probably traveled the furthest, right here, right in the front row, coming from Ohio, Fenig Equipment. So he brought one of the pieces of equipment that he'll demonstrate and describe a little later. You know, Allied Co-op we have here as well. So thank you for bringing the Highboy, I believe. John Deere's here as well. So, you know, I'm sure I'm missing a few. Brian, you can help me out with.
Yeah, St. Joseph Equipment, let us use the tractor.
Some more equipment from St. Joseph's Equipment. So as we go down, you know, there might be other folks that help put this thing together that we'll need to thank. So with that, kind of the outline for the day, I'm going to pass the mic off here shortly to Brian Malashevsky. He's the chairperson for the Buffalo Trempealeau Group. He's going to kind of give you an overview of why, you know, cover crops matter to him and in this area of the world. Then we're going to kind of run through each example. So we'll wait to run the equipment until the very end. So we'll describe each piece of equipment. And then if you're interested in sticking around to watch those pieces of equipment run, we'll do that after kind of the presentation. So after we get through each of those pieces of equipment, we'll turn the mic over to Matt. And he can talk kind of cover crop seed selection and timing. And, you know, if there's any unusual questions from the group, he would be a great one to ask at that point. And that'll wrap up our day. So it's only going to be about a 2-hour show today. So we'll get you in and out here and back to enjoy this beautiful day. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Brian.
Hey, Scott, one more. Comro is responsible as well.
Comro, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Malashevsky. I'm one of the farmers that's part of the group. I'd like to say I get roped into this, but I really want to be part of this group because it's a collaboration. It's the teamwork. You know, this cover cropping's it's not new. and it's interesting. And so I figured, why do this on your own? You know, we can bounce ideas off one another, and we really have a strong core group, a lot of diversification, a lot of different types of farmers, and a lot of support in the area. We really have a great network of people, and so we're fortunate to have that. So why do I cover crop, and why do we set this group up? It's there's multiple reasons. You know, it's hilly here, and so there's a lot of reasons. There's erosion control, there's building organic matter. I could just go down the list, and whether or not you're part of a program to plant cover crops or want to try something new, it's kind of why we got together and like we're here today. So like I said, cover crops aren't new. It's but what's new is what's behind us, and that's what's so neat about this group is we kind of pulled everybody together. You know, there's a lot of new equipment that's not around. It's out there. It's manufactured, but it's not necessarily in our backyard. But yet we want to do this in our backyard. So really, again, it's a team effort, and really it's awesome to be part of this group. And so other reasons I plant cover crops is not only the erosion control, but to build the organic matter to make more profit and reduce your input costs. And that takes time. And what also is great about this group is, okay, let's say I try a practice, plant a cover crop, and it doesn't work. Well, I might get frustrated, but yet it might have worked, that same practice with the neighboring farmer or the other team member in our group tried, it worked on his farm. So we can bounce those ideas off one another and figure out, okay, why did it work on his farm and not my farm? And it's just that motivation that keeps it going. And hey, let's try this again. So what you'll see here today is a lot of the pieces of equipment are for interseeding and getting a cover crop going even before you take off your existing crop, which here in the north with our short growing season is important because everybody can plant cover crops after a crop, but how do we get them going during a crop? And so a lot of those pieces of equipment are here today. So we'll go through and demonstrate those. And I don't know where we want to start. I think we won't start nor we'll just start on one side, and I'll bring Carl up. Carl's from the area, and he's got a drone here, so he's part of the group. Carl, why don't you come on up? And sure.
Hi, I'm Carl Geske, farm southern end of the county, right on the border, and this is something I've thought about for a long time. Maybe 6 years ago, we started using rye on our farm as a cover, and that seems to be the easiest and most resilient. It grows no matter what. We'll even spread it, you know, in the fall, in November. It won't germinate till spring, but it always comes up. And I was interested in getting other cover crops going, but we don't have the growing season. So I thought about aerial seeding and stuff, but we're in the hills and can't get a plane in and everything. We did, use the hybrid here with rye. We've done that the last few years through the beans to get it started earlier. But that's where this really idea really came from. And the cost is kind of prohibited, I guess. But I decided that it was something that I really wanted to try and get into. So it's definitely a learning process. But yeah, are we going to go all the way through it right now?
Do you want to describe how it works?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a Joyens. It's a company from China. It's a smaller company. Most all of them do come from China. Part of the issue right now is the tariffs make this a lot. It's 25% more expensive to get things to come in from there. But if you're interested in what this one cost me, I think I ended up spending about $13,000 to get it here with full sets of batteries and everything I need to continuously operate it. But once the tariffs come off, and hopefully eventually, it'd probably be about under $10,000. And the main use for these has been spraying. You can see the nozzles on the side here, and I didn't get it for that, and I have not used it for spraying yet. But I got the spreader. This one will hold 15 liters. Everything's in metric get, from other countries besides here. That's like 4 gallons of liquid. It can carry 33 pounds, but the tank only holds about 25 pounds of seed. So that's one thing that they could probably get better. I have been using a 20-foot pattern, and I spread at 12 miles an hour. So part of the speed of it is setting up, filling it, having it take off and stuff. I have 6 sets of batteries. They'll last 12 to 15 minutes on a load. That's the amount of batteries they recommended to having the charger and a generator, and then you never have to stop. You land, you switch batteries out, you fill it with seed, and then it takes off again. The controller here runs on a Android. Sure. Yeah, sorry. And so you can either go with the GPS perimeter of your field. You can use Google Maps and then just make the perimeter of your field, and that's what I've done. And then the pattern comes up, and you kind of decide all the factors that you want. And then once you hit go, it'll take off, it'll spread, and it'll come back and it'll land all by itself. So you don't have to do anything except for the elevation. It doesn't track elevation. I did get that there is a terrain tracker on it, but they don't have the software on this one for it to work with the spreader, only with the sprayer. So I knew when I got this that there was going to be some things that, need to be improved, and that's one of those. So in the hills, that's the keeping the elevation about, where you want it. Towards the end, I was way up there. So, yeah. So, as far as seed goes, I'm spreading about 25 pounds per trip. Grass seed, because of the higher seeding rates and stuff, is kind of less practical. So I'm spreading brassicas, and I tried a bunch of clovers with it. Some of the mixes, I did a 5 and a 7-way mix I got, and one of them was 8 pounds per acre was a full seeding rate, and the other one was 10. So I was doing 2.5 acres per trip. So, yeah.
And you'll fly it later?
Yeah, I'll fly it when we're done. So, okay. I don't know if anybody has any questions for it.
Okay. We'll just start down the line. Everybody, let's see, that's not turned around. Should we just walk behind it so everybody can see? We're out in the field. We're all gathered on this side by this village.
Split the two apart. Put one of them on your belt,
Okay.
so you're not swinging around.
So just walk behind the tractor so you can see
The actual unit.
Which one of you wanna?
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
y'all ask.
Get people to stop swinging the thing.
Well, I mean, do you guys any-
Just do whatever you guys do. Hold on. Swing around.
So this is a high speed. So this is a high speed. This is what you call a turbo till. It's this one happens to be a McFarland brand. There's several different brands out there, and I let Jared explain from Tractor Central how the unit works and go from there.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me? All right. So we've got a Valmar 3255 set up here on a 3-point hitch. And we've got that coupled here with this Insight tool. So basically Darren can work the ground and get his cover crop applied at the same time with this. So There's a fan here on this Valmar ear speeder, Valmar ear seeder. And then we've got tubes running to the back of the implement with deflector plates. So it's going to blow that seed. It's got a metering device. And then we use a GPS signal to input speed. And it's going to blow the seed back and deflect it in the back. So we're going to use the discs here and the baskets in the front. Right now we're set up at, I think, a 6-degree angle to kind of work that dirt a little bit. And then it spreads the rye seed, and then the rolling baskets cover it up and incorporate it into the dirt.
The speed is usually.
Typically, I think he can run 8 to 10 miles an hour with this rig. So, yeah, I think 32 feet with this one at 10 miles an hour. So, get something done.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Joe, for that. And we'll move over to the next piece of equipment that's here. Allied Co-op was nice enough to bring their rig here today. Marilyn, would you want to? Yeah, just describe how it works.
Hello, I thank Brian and their group to let us be a part of this and working with them for the last 3 or 4 years. So, last 3 years we've been doing over-the-top spreading of cover crops with our machine here, and it's been kind of a trial by error. It seems like there's a lot of variables. Like, one is moisture. It's really nice if we can get a rain after we do it. It's a taunting task to see a rig like this running over your beans because you do not follow rows, right, Mason? Yeah, you just fall right through. So the time frame that we shoot for is about half leaf droppage. So we're in that time frame. We did some acres yesterday. And so I guess the advantages, disadvantages. I know people got the drills, their own equipment, they can spit it on themselves, but if we can get the crop established 2-3 weeks earlier, like I said, we don't have the growing season as some folks. So it's so if we can do that, and then also it's a good timing for co-ops like ourselves. We have the time to do that for you when you guys are busy with your other tasks during the harvest. And you can also spread your fertilizer, so you're saving a trip for the coming spring. So if you got any questions, the other thing we noticed over the years is if there was the cover on or residue you already have, we've had better luck when we get a little more soil to seed contact and stuff, more ground that's worked. So if you got any questions, we'll be around. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Yeah, so again, the power of the group, each year there's, I don't know, a handful of us, 5, 6, 7 people that overseed, usually rye, sometimes clover with rye, cereal rye that is, into standing soybeans. And usually that's 30-inch beans, but it doesn't have to be, so they can follow the rows somewhat. And I like mixing my potash with the cereal rye. Then your fertilizer's already on. So then in spring, when you have that green, nice green lush field, you can just plant right through it, and some of your fertilizer's already on, and it's already done for you, planting in green. So, and the co-op's really good. They calibrate, they check the spread pattern, and it does a really good job for being a spinner. So they've been a big support and a big help to our group. And like I said, again, power of the group. The first year we tried this, there was 3 or 4 of us, and half of us, it didn't work out. So I would say if I wasn't part of this group, I would probably not have done it the next year. But because it worked on some of the other farmers in the area, but hey, you know what, let's try it again next year. And then it worked out great. So we've been doing it ever since. So we're kind of getting it narrowed down. And like Marilyn said, a lot of it has to do with residue and timing and moisture. But overall, it works most of the time. So, and if it fails, it's you still have your fertilizer on for next year. So that's the advantage of doing a cover crop this way. So, all right, we'll move on to the next piece.
Starting to drop. green yet, but I know some are completely dropped. It needs to be starting to drop. We want a little bit of moisture in the forecast.
So this is a homemade tool by Fenning Equipment, and Gary Fenning and his wife Angie were gracious enough to come up here today all the way from Ohio just for us for 2 hours of fame. So really appreciate you guys doing that. It's I'll let Gary explain the unit, but again, thanks for making the journey, and we're really excited about this unit and trying it out.
Thanks for the invite. We really appreciate it. And if you've never heard of Fenning Equipment, you can Google Fenning Equipment. You need to go to our website. There was a few guys here that did get our newsletter. We put a newsletter out every Friday. It goes out to over 4,000 customers that we have back in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan. So feel free to join in. But we do a lot of work with cover crop in Ohio. Actually, I have 2 or 3 guys this morning putting cover crop seeders on top of corn heads, where we'll be shelling corn and putting cover crop out at the same time. But this unit here is an interseeder bar, and we all know how important seed soil contact is. You got to have seed soil contact with a cover crop situation. And this is what this bar provides. So I have a couple pictures here. We do have these units here are prototype units. We did retail a bar to a neighbor of ours a couple months ago, but he went out when the corn was V4, V5, and you can see the stand that we had with just 16 pounds of cover crop seed. And this picture over here shows we just took 1 unit off and just blew it on top of the ground, and you can see what kind of stand or establishment we have, just putting it on top of the ground with no incorporation. So we'll blow it out in front of these little discs on these units. The roller will make sure that there is good seed soil contact. And the most important thing you have to remember about interseeding is you have to ask the questions about your herbicide program. I don't sell the chemicals, but that is the main thing that I've ran into 8 to 10 years since we've been doing this is your herbicide program. You have to figure out what you've been using or what you can use so that'll allow you to interseed cover crop. So this particular unit here, we have downforce on each individual unit. We're using a Valmar cover crop box. That box will hold roughly 1,800 pounds of product. And then we have hydraulic downforce that we can apply up to 1,000 pounds of pressure per each row unit going through the field. Now this, like I said, this particular application here was done at V4, V5, and interseeding cover crop. Even we live right on the Ohio-Indiana border in the central part of Ohio. Even at the end of the day, as everybody tries different things with cover crop, at the end of the day, interseeding cover crop is going to be the way it's going to be done, in my opinion, because from November to March is when we want our covers. After harvest down in Ohio, and I'm sure it's up here, there's just not enough growing degree days to get a cover crop started. So that's where we can go out, and the whole goal is that you'll be driving through cover crop 1 foot tall, 1.5 foot tall when you're showing your corn. That's the objective, to have that cover crop seeded in late June, early July, early July. Now we also have cover crop seeders that you can put on top of 28 bars, ammonia bars, so we can do that process, doing 2 things at one time. But there's a lot of different ways that you can get cover crop interseeded in the middle of June if you just put a few pieces of the puzzle together. Now we also sell bars that we have row units. So your cover crop would be in a row. We sell 2 row units per row. This aspect here, we're spreading that cover crop between the corn rows. So the full 30 inches, you will have a cover crop growing. One of the downfalls with putting your cover crop in a row with a row unit, you have to think about coming back in next spring and planting soybeans. Your soybeans could end up right on top of that row of cover crop. Don't know if that's good or bad, but this system here will spread the cover crop out across that whole 30 inches. This bar I'm going to leave here. It's going to be here till middle of next summer. So if there's guys that want to try this particular bar on their farm, you have to get with Brian, and he would be more than happy to work with you as far as logistics of getting it to your farm. But I am going to leave it here, so hopefully we can get some acres on it. Don't be afraid to use it this fall, but definitely next summer, late spring, that's when the acres need to be put on this particular piece. Is there any questions I can?
So is there any like, forums out there of herbicide programs that other people are using of, you know, why reinvent the wheel if it's?
Yeah, I really cannot tell you what herbicide to use on a particular program. I suggest getting a hold of your chemical guy. He could obviously tell you, but I did find out here this summer that we had some trials with this particular piece, and the ground was pretty mellow, but we were getting the seed. Our extension agent thought that we were getting the seed below the chemical, and that's why we had good growth at that particular time. There was no chemical damage whatsoever. And I find out interseeding, if it don't work, 9 times out of 10, what I hear as a businessman or as a business owner, it's the seeder, it's the units, it's the box. Well, it's 9 times out of 10, it's not the application. It's, you have to think forward on what was applied to the soil several months ago as far as a weed control. So that is going to be the first thing I want everybody to think about before they even think about using this bar.
What covers are you using typically in this?
You can use any mixes you want, radishes, ryegrass. You can use 5-way mix. We can go up to, as it's set now, I think we're going to be putting on about 50 pounds of the acre as it's set today. But what I'm telling you is here's 16 pounds. And you can see what that picture looks like. I think anything over 20, 25 is going to be way too much cover, because you have to remember, you got to have a corn planter ready to go next spring that's going to plant into that. And if that corn planter is not set up properly with closing wheels, row cleaners, good seed disc openers, that'll be the last year you try your covers, because this is the first step. Your planter's the next step. And we also do a lot of work with nutrient placement, fertilizer placement on planters. So if you have any questions on that aspect of it, I'll be more than happy to help you out. So we are a family business. My boy works for me. We have 13 employees in Ohio, but I suggest go to FennigEquipment.com and it would tell you everything you want to know about Fennig Equipment. So thanks a lot for having me up here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Gary and Angie, for making the trip and letting us use this tool and get some acres and see what we can do. So, okay, let's move over to the next piece of equipment.
Well, I think it's the thing to use.
So this is a homemade interseeder, and this isn't new. These are around. I actually made this myself. We didn't know we were going to get Gary to bring his nice fancy seeder up here. So we've been talking about interseeding for years in the group, and we just cannot find anybody in the area that has one of these. So I wanted to put something together that was inexpensive, and I didn't reinvent the wheel. Like I said, these are out there. It's just a rotary hoe, and the gangs in between the rows are missing, so you can straddle your rows. And then again, it's a seeder, very similar to the one that's on Fennings. It's smaller, and this unit here is for 12 row as well. But you can fold the wings and do 6. So, and I was able to try it. I didn't get this put together until July, and I was able to find a organic farmer that was planting his corn later. Actually, the plot is actually on 93 just before Elk Creek. And it actually turned out really well. I planted a mix, some brassicas, turnips, radish, some ryegrass, and some red clover. And it's up, it's there. Some of the corn is off, it'll be chopped off. So again, the whole objective is to get a cover crop established and going. So as soon as you get that crop off, that cover can take off and give you more before the ground freezes. So again, this unit's only done 10, 15 acres, maybe 20. And it's turned out so far. So I'm pretty excited about this and excited about Gary's unit over there. So again, you can put something like this together. There's rotary hose out there. You just knock some gangs off and buy a seeder and give it a try. So, okay, we'll move down.
Philip Aldera. I'm part of the group that's putting on the show today, and I brought the old-fashioned no-till grain drill. There's not much interseeding going on with that in corn or soybeans, but when it's all harvested, give her help.
See, I mean, the no-till drill is they're around. It's like Philip said, the advantage of a no-till drill is you don't have to till the soil, and as soon as the crop's off, you can start planting. And it's so that's another form of getting a cover crop in. And I think there's a deep ripper around the corner. I think that was just going to be here for sometimes with a lot of this, like this field we're in today is chopped corn silage, and like on the end rows, the headlands of the field, you get compaction. And so that's what that tillage tool is here in case to break up that hard pan. So you're not really doing a lot of tillage. It's called a zone builder because you're just doing that zone and breaking that hard pan, and then you come along with a cover crop on top and get green growing. So with that, that's everything we have here. We can run everything if you guys want to stick around, or we plan to run everything. Do some test plots. I didn't talk to Darren. He's actually chopping corn. This is his field. I think he's planning to spread manure on this field yet. So I would like to have these strips left so they can be here all through the fall and even spring. So again, like part of the group, we have different types of farmers. Like this particular farm, Darren's part of the group. He spreads 10,000 plus gallons of liquid manure. And how does a cover work? Either before the cover, after the cover, putting manure on top of the cover. And so that's what's the power of the group again, is figuring out what the best way to do that is. So so in this situation, these covers will be down and there'll probably be manure put on top of it. So hopefully we'll flag everything today, and so we know what was done where, and we'll put a sign up by the road. The sign is actually not made. It's being made. It's being finished today. But wherever we do a plot like this with a special tillage equipment, we're going to have a sign by the road, and we're going to do this where there's more of a heavily traveled road, and that sign will have a YouTube link on it. And the goal with that is if somebody's driving by and say, even one of you say, "Wow, that's a really nice looking cover crop. Wonder how he did that." You can go to the link and it will be, you can watch the video just like you can today. This is all, you can rewatch this going on today. So that's kind of our goal this year for the 2021 BTFN group is showcasing these practices and why reinvent the wheel, so other farmers that want to try it can they don't have to guess at how to get started. So, and then again with COVID, it's nice to have the YouTube videos. So there'll probably be less meetings going on this year as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Check out the link. If you see a sign along the road that says Elk Creek Watershed BTFN, I think that's what the signs are. They put with a YouTube link. And there is one of the other farmers in the group on 120 Highway 121 in between Independence and Whitehall. He has some prairie, I don't know if you want to call them prairie strips, but prairie seeded plots. So there's a sign, there will be a sign posted there, so you can see what that looks like and how it's establishing and coming along. So, and then this interseeded plot today will be posted, and we'll probably have more plots that will be posted. So yeah, stay tuned for that and stick around. We're gonna try these tools out. I think the drone is and the fending seeder will probably start there because that's the two highlights here today.
Brian, do you want to talk about variety stuff with Matt now?
Okay. Yeah. Maybe we should have Matt speak next, and then do the demos.
Yeah.
That way, if somebody needs to leave. So, with that, we also have another speaker, Matt. Where's he at here? Okay. Does he want us to go down there? Matt, do you want us to come down?
Come by. I can come to you. So bring it after we'll travel.
I want to see that guy put the trailer back down this way for the seating audience.
Oh yes, if you need to sit, that's why the trailer's here. It's our portable. Good idea, Ed. Thanks. So Matt is again this group when we got started. We have such great support in our area with all of our just the community part of it. From our county extension, the FSA, to the co-ops, to private ag supply companies, to seed companies. I mean, you just go down the list. I mean, everybody's so supportive, and we have a really strong group. Everybody shows up all the time, and I don't know if that's the beer or just talking about covers, but.
Well, there's beer here?
Anyways, that maybe for later.
Oh, I got you.
So you have to watch the covers grow, right?
Right.
So we're lucky to have Short Lane Ag is in our backyard. They have a location in Pigeon Falls, and I believe Matt is out of Colby. Is that okay? They have another location. So with that, I'll let Matt.
Hey, thank you so much. You guys talked about so much here today just now. I don't even know if there's really much for me to expand upon, but thank you very much for having me here today. I guess the biggest things that I guess I would like to go over that I didn't hear too much talked about was probably the importance of building contacts with your interseeding program, and not just saying I want to do an interseeding because I just want cover. It's actually way past that. So what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about what are the thought processes when somebody says I want to do an interseeding, how I break that down, and then we'll go into species selections. We'll talk about rates a little bit, and then I'll talk a little bit about some soil health principles, which are really, really important, and what's the biggest driver of why you want to have a cover crop program. How many people are doing cover cropping right now, whether you're doing rye, small grains, or interseeding? Okay, well, yeah, oh, okay, all right. What's that?
Most people here.
So what would you say that the main methodology was for interseeding here for guys starting out?
The cover.
Well, like application-wise, broadcasting?
Broadcast to just spreading with a spinner spreader on top of the drone.
Yeah, so that's the very first thing is that I ask when somebody says I want to do a cover cropping. The first thing I say is, what is going to be your method of application? Because that is really going to dictate what your overall rate and mostly what your cost per acre is going to be on that. So generally speaking, and this goes true for any kind of cropping that you do, especially with like hay fields, if you're going to have a mechanically applied system, especially with like an airflow, and you're going to have that soil disturbed a little bit, your rates are going to stay lower because you're going to have generally better seed to soil contact than you would if you had the big high boy spreading over there. But there is a huge advantage of having a broadcast scheme too, especially if you're going to do it with a high boy. Can anybody guess why? Well, actually there's two. You go run the crop over. Okay, 3, it's cheap. Because you can double up your urea application. Has anybody tried that here? The very first time that we did any kind of interseeding it was at our dad's field. We had to wait for him to leave to go on a fishing trip to Canada because he didn't want us to try it. So we literally followed him down the road with his fishing buddies with the high boy spreader. because what we felt was a huge advantage was if you can mix your fertilizer in with your inner seeding, you're taking care of two things with one action, and you're reducing how many times you're going to have your equipment onto the field. And the last 4 or 5 years that we've been doing it, we haven't seen any adverse effect towards germination, establishment, especially when it comes to mixing it with urea. So that's one thing that makes that cost effective, is because it's cheap, because you get a wider berth, you get a wider spread, it's faster, you're not running over your crops, and you're getting the interseeding out there. But you know, but people get creative with it too. The one thing, and you were mentioning this before, is fabricating your own piece of equipment. This winter, we had 3 dairies that pulled the trigger on getting an air seeder, whether it was brand new or whether it was used. And with their mechanical know-how, they found an old piece of tillage equipment, something similar to this, or they put it on a 32% applicator. That one is getting very, very popular because of the same concept of doing with urea. So if you're a liquid nitrogen person, you can put that airflow seeder right onto that 32% applicator, and you're taking care of 2 things. So then the second question that I ask them that they got to decide is, what do you want that cover crop to do? And a lot of times somebody will say, well, I just want it to cover. But there's more to it. The species selection process is so dynamic, is you can pinpoint your certain needs through the selection process and the overall rate. So for example, if somebody says, well, I have a dairy system and I want to do broadcast spreading of manure over the top, so I want to have something that has a lot of structure up top, is going to create a lot of pore space in the dirt for that manure to flow in, and I want to have leafy vegetation to cover it up as it's wilting down. Well, then that's something that you would go more into brassicas, like a dwarf Essex rape, trophy rape, kale, 7-top turnip. You know what I mean? So that would be something I would up the rate on. Generally with those, you're looking anywhere from like a ½ pound to 3 pounds to the acre on that. If somebody says, well, I want to follow up and I want to do corn on corn, then you look towards sequestering and nitrogen building. So that's where you look towards doing cowpeas. You look towards doing bursting clover, crimson clovers, and then you also have like a dash of your brassicas in there too for the sequestering agent on that. So you know what I mean? Like, and the list can go on and on. You know, one more is like if somebody says, well, I want to do a soybean rotation after my corn. Well, you can pick dwarf Essex rape as your primary driver, because in a cited study, not just in North America, but in Western Europe in the last 10 years, they found that a brassica actually feeds a fungus in the dirt or in the soil that will predate nematodes. And then when the leaves hit the ground and they start decomposing, it actually helps feed that more. And the plant itself actually is allelopathic towards nematodes. So if you have a field that has a nematode history, it actually can drive that stuff out of there. Because what a lot of people fail to realize is that cover cropping is nothing new, and it's a very old standard. How many people here are gardeners or their parents are huge gardeners? That's it? There's no big gardeners down here? Well, my mom always taught me that when it comes to gardening, one important thing to have is companion crops. So you plant marigolds on the outer rim of your garden to keep certain insects away. You plant your squash next to your sweet corn for weed suppression. You plant your peas near your sweet corn for nitrogen fixation. It's the same concept, and you apply that not just from the garden, but you apply it to a larger scale, and you do it to your fields out here. So that's why I don't really like to call them cover crops necessarily. I like to call them companion crops because they work in unison and they work together towards weed suppression, nitrogen fixation, sequestering, and most importantly, soil health building, which is, can we walk this way toward my thing? Oh, hey, why don't you carry this? Hey, thanks. Oh, I got this one. So another thing that I'll ask after everybody says, well, I want to know what my selection is and all that kind of stuff, the next thing that you have to implore to them is timing, which once we get all settled over here, I'll explain that more. Who's our camera girl here?
Erica.
Well, Erica, why don't you say hi to the viewers at home?
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
She's doing a great job. She did not break away from the action.
My arms aren't tired yet.
She has not switched arms yet. She's doing great. So before I get to this, oh, sir, the sitting room only needs to get in. I love the trailer selection. They picked a very long trailer for, he must be a really important person. Oh, you're the host. No wonder you got the best seat now. So before I get into this right here, I want to touch on one last thing, and this is probably the most important thing, is timing and scouting ahead. And what I mean by scouting ahead is, if you're going to do broadcasting especially, you need to know what the condition of that topsoil is going to be like. You don't want to have any kind of crusting, and you do not necessarily want to have this planned where you're going to be in a dry spell where it won't rain for a while. Now, somebody will say like, well, I don't want my seed to wash away either. That's true. But if you have a half inch, 1 inch, inch and a half rain, a lot of that seed's going to get driven into that ground by sediment wash, which is really important. And especially if you have like a minimum till system where you have a lot of debris on top, that works to your favor, because as that seed is getting flowed down, because a lot of these seeds are perfectly round like little marbles, they'll get caught on that debris and they'll sprout wherever they get washed into, whether it's a wormhole, corn stalks, you know, leftover residue for like maybe rye or something like that. So that's something that you need to scout ahead to see what the condition of your field is. And that goes into the final point, is that comes down to timing. Generally earlier in the year, the better, because we don't get those blazing hot days. We don't get that heavy crusting over. We generally have dewy mornings. So the texture of that dirt is perfect. It has nice fine texture, bumps, nooks, crannies, everything for that seed to roll into, fall into. And that's why when it comes to interseeding, I'm a big advocate for V1 to V3. V2 is my favorite spot, right when that corn is just itty bitty big. Before we tried it at knee high, it was a colossal failure. When I went out there a month later, there was no interseeding to be seen. And then my dad said, ha, I told you it wouldn't work. So then the next year we did it at V4, we had a better catch. And then we did it at V3, then V2. And then we actually this year had a large CAFO go in, and they actually applied it right before the corn was spiking. And that is some of the best interseeding I've seen so far. So the earlier, the better. There's no worry about that corn getting out-competed. There's no worry about that corn getting zapped of nitrogen. None of that has happened in the 3 seasons that we've been pushing the envelope to do it earlier and earlier. And you want to have this early because you want to have that interseeding have good establishment. Because if you do it too late, that corn's going to canopy, and then that cover crop is going to be pressured to put more upgrowth on top of the dirt because it's got to chase sunlight. And it's going to forget about the root zone underneath. And the root zone is the most important thing when it comes to cover cropping. That's what's giving you biology, energizing. That's what's giving you more channels for your corn or your beans to grow into. And that's what's giving you the sequestering. Granted, the foliage on top is important because it's stopping the erosion from rainfall and what have you, but the root zone is far more important. That's why you want to do this earlier. That's why it's earlier is the better. So V2 to V3 is what you want to be shooting for, which kind of leads me to my next point here. What's the history of this field? Like, is it a conventional tilt system, no tilt system?
We work our manure in. It's
Minimal.
So minimum till system. So like once it's like corn and you're going to put manure down, you'll chisel plow it?
yeah.
Okay.
Put beans on once every 3-4 years.
Okay. Okay. So it's corn and beans though. That's what you do. Okay. Well, you know, when I dug that up, that actually kind of reflects that with your minimum till system going right here. Because you do have quite a bit of development right here. So what I mean by that is when it falls out of my hand like this, that's a good thing. Because this is showing that this has structure, but at the same time, it has good pore space. It's got some aggregate stability to it. But the one thing that shows in this field that is kind of revealing is the compaction underneath. So when he said chisel plowing, that made a lot of sense because this was about 5 inches down. Sometimes we'll go deeper, but most kind of stay shallow up on top. So you can see right here, this piece is staying whole, which some people would say like, well, that's fine, but if it takes all of my muscle to break this into pieces, how do you think that your corn roots are going to fare with this? So I'm going to leave this piece up here. Everybody can kind of get a look at this. Does anybody know what the term jang is? I know you guys do, but I'll explain it anyway. Jang is where your root system of your row crop cannot go down. So it's forced to find a seam and it stays vertical. In some cases, it actually goes up. So when you dig it up, it forms the shape of a J. It's going the opposite direction. You want those roots to drive down deep, kind of like you see on this one. This was in a spot where there was some good tilled soil, so it had a good drive. But when you walk away far enough, just a little bit from it, you get to these hard, chunky pieces where it can't get maximum nutrients. It's not reaching its full potential when you have these compacted layers. And that's what a cover crop system helps with. And to further emphasize that, I got the slate test up here. It's really small, so if you want to, you can come in closer. COVID. I mean, stay away. Well, yeah, everybody can take a turn coming up here, but right here, this is a piece of the field lane where this was continuous cover, low disturbance. And as I'm moving this around, little chunks are flaking off of it, but for the most part, and for the viewers at home, can you see that? For the most part, it's generally clear. And that piece, it's holding its own and it's staying in shape. It's had continuous cover. It's had multiple different kind of root systems going throughout it, and the biology is kept in place, and it's doing its duty, and it's holding together, right? Then, this is a chunk from this field right here. And as I'm walking around, this thing is just bleeding dirt, and you can see the off-colorness of it. This is one of those compacted chunks. So even though it was super hard in my hand, and I had to really squeeze the heck out of it to get it to clump out, look how easy this is. And I just tap my finger, and it's just flaking. This has no stability. This has no biology to it, and it has no functionality for somebody that's trying to make money on acreage. So once again, I'll do the same thing with this one. It's just flaking just ever so slightly, but it's still staying clear. That's the kind of field that I would want to farm into. Something that holds its stability, something that can do water control, and something that's going to leave nutrient availability for my corn crop. This is the one thing that an NRCS agent would have you do too. So I could take that and I can break that apart, right? Kind of holds its form yet. Whereas if I try to grab this one, it just turns the mud in my hand. This is why your equipment gets stuck in tillage situations, in conventional tilled systems. Systems that don't have any kind of continuous cover cropping or adaptive rotations. This is why your stuff gets stuck. This is why you guys spend more money on fertilizer each year and you can't possibly get ahead. That's why. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't say this as, I'm not saying this on the standpoint of like, I'm not like that one Greta girl that we got to do this to save the planet. I'm telling you guys all this because this is an economic standpoint. You want to have your business platform have functionality and resiliency to it. And that's what you get with having continuous cover. Now, at the same standpoint, some people are thinking, well, if I just do no-till and I do continuous till, how many no-tillers are here? That's it, yeah. How many people have no-till fields that are older than 5 years? 10? 12? Oh, you blocked on 12? So my brother has a 11-year no-till field, so you got him beat by a season. But then most of his systems are 6 to 7. And he has one huge problem that's happening. So he'll do corn on corn, he'll do beans, and then once in a while he'll add a small grain to it, but he doesn't do any kind of cover cropping in between, other than that small grain. And his fields look just like this. And the reason for that is that when you're not disturbed, when that ground isn't being disturbed by different kind of root systems, it turns into a brick. And I'm starting to see that now with 6 to 7 year no-till fields. And the only element that they have to do is that they just have to have biomass out there. They got to have some roots to restart the biology and to keep it fed. Because if you go into a field and you dig and you can't find a worm, well, that makes sense. because there's nothing to feed that worm. But if you go to a field that's got cover crops or any kind of vegetation on top, that's where the worms are. And that's the kind of the same system. So that's something that I would spread caution for the no-tillers, especially getting into your long no-till fields, is you want to start exploring more about building covers and building residue so you can keep that biology fed and you can have it work for you. I don't know, is there anything else you want me to?
Questions, concerns?
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to do is basically what you're showing us there is a sod field versus corn on corn. And we're trying to imitate what a sod field usually done for us after it was in hay for 3, 4 to 5 years and then going back to corn, which is virtually non-existent. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I would even say when you said that, you're trying to mimic that. Yeah, absolutely. You're trying to have that, especially in a field that has multiple species in it, your clovers, your grasses, and stuff like that. Different kind of roots that are sending different kind of signals to the biology, the bacteria and the fungi down below. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
And the reason is there's no cattle to feed the forage to, like there used to be. Every farm was 80% sod back when I was a kid.
Well, that was us too. You know, you only had enough corn to do a little bit of silage, some high moisture corn, and then you had a lot of small grains for your straw and your feed. And then you're right, it was all sod. You know, and that's great you brought that up, because this winter I had a Facebook argument with somebody. They said, like, well, why is it that all of a sudden there's all these water issues in Wisconsin? How come this wasn't brought up 10, 15 years ago? Well, it's because the landscape got changed. You know, the what people wanted to use for forages to feed the dairies or the dairy cattle and whatnot, that changed. Then grain prices changed. When corn shot up 7, 8, almost hitting $9,
the hay went away.
Hay went away, CRP went away. There was people farming the ditches. You know, the landscape changed. So that's why all these things kind of came to light. But, you know, also when you think about like a forest floor, you do clear cutting. How is it that everything grows up in that forest floor? There's automatically stuff growing through that without being disturbed or without having potash or urea applied to it. Well, it's because there's a nutrient cycle that it's at optimal prime. And that's what we want to try to do, is bring that element, that functionality to ag systems. Any other questions towards, like, what's a good interseeding mix? What's a cool crop that everybody should get excited about?
What is that?
If somebody's like, well, I don't know what I want to necessarily have, I just want to try something, a good interseeding mix that would be it'd be around 18 pounds to the acre. It would generally be 3 different kind of brassicas, one being a 7-top turnip, dwarf Essex rape, and a trophy rape. Those 3 work in tandem really well, especially the 7-top. 7-top is like extremely cheap. It's super tiny. It's the size of like a purple top turnip, but instead of costing you like $1.50, $1.75, this generally will be on the cheaper end, like $1.10, $1.15. And they're hyper aggressive growth. They put out a tuber, so it's a lot of sequestering, and they have these neat, gnarly, fibrous masses that shoot out. And then what I would also add to that, and I would try to emphasize, is you would add small grains to it, oats. Now everybody kind of gets shuddered by that, like, why would I want to throw those in there? Oats are cheap. They're aggressive growth. They haven't shown that they compete against the corn, especially if you have it at 10, 15, or even 30 pounds to the acre. And that helps add a layer of residue when that heads out and it turns into straw. That adds a layer of residue to your fields, and you're not spending a whole lot of money. And then you would have your crimson clover in there too. That's like the iron horse of cover crops. If everything else fails because there's a blight, there's predation from insects or what have you, crimson clover is the one that's always the last man standing. That one is a steady Eddie. And generally that one you can get a good stand when it's 3, 5, or 8 pounds.
Interseeding, right?
Interseeding.
You're not talking cover after the corn.
No, this is all interseeding. Yeah, this is all interseeding.
So now what are you recommending like now?
So like right now, your choices are very limited to get maximized growth. So some people are pushing the envelope to do some brassicas out there, just because if they can get 5 to 6 inches of growth and about like 4 inches of root zone underneath it, they're not spending a whole lot of money, and they're getting some kind of cover out there. But generally right now, your best buck for something like this is to put cereal rye out. And you can do anywhere from like 50 to 75 pounds if you want just basic cover and you don't want to have that become too big of a cost. But if you want to go the full measure, or especially turn this into where you might want to combine it or have it chopped for forage, then you want to push it to like 100 to 125 pounds.
Now, I got to tell you what I tried.
You tell me what you tried.
I tried oats and rye together.
In an
Right after
interseeding or
corn-
afterwards?
Right after corn silage, so it was probably early September, probably to mid-September. I had it in by this time. And the first year I tried it was maybe 4 to 5 years ago. The oats went crazy. It almost got the head out before it froze. And then that all laid down, and we manured that all winter. And then in the spring, the rye went crazy. And it was so tall, I moldboarded it in, and we had a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of green manure.
Yeah.
So I had almost like 2 cover crops growing together, which now this year I did the same thing. So I did 50 pounds rye and about 50 pounds oats, and we mixed it in the same hopper and just went. See what now I got to see what it's going to do.
Just imagine if you would have about all the earthworm activity you had right before you moldboard plowed that too.
Well, I was questioning what was going to do as far as, okay, I put corn into there, you know, is the spray going to take that stuff down? Or?
Yeah, so my dad, we had a rye winter wheat cover crop blasted over the top of a soybean field, and we sprayed it, and then he chisel plowed it. And then about 25% of that rye came back through the ground, but with that rye going through with that corn, that never bothered it. It never skipped a beat, you know.
It did what it was supposed to do.
But that's a good system, especially where you had the residue of the oats, and then you had the living cover with the rye. Now I see the earthworm part is because there's a cited study done by University of Wisconsin and I think Iowa State or Purdue, one of those two. And it was about 10 years ago, and they found that a moderate earthworm population will process 2 tons of debris per acre in 1 year. So 2 tons of debris that they'll just simply just sticking their head out of the ground and grabbing something and pulling it back down through the hole. But every time you disturb those earthworm holes, you're forcing them to reset that whole system. So they can't necessarily keep up with something like that. But so that's why I say, like, when you leave those worms to do their duty, they actually return the favor because they're reprocessing all that residue that makes it pesky for planting the next season. And they turn that into basically fertilizer gold when they bring that down. If that makes sense. The other species that's really got me intrigued is not only incorporating the small grains aspect to it, but also flaxseed. Flaxseed, you know, like used for flax oil, flax milk, stuff like that. It's a smaller seed. It's a smoother seed. It would go through an airflow really, really well. So, and it would be really cheap. But what makes it really interesting is that it's got super aggressive growth, and it doesn't worry so much of what the top of it looks like. It just wants enough sunlight, but it puts out a lot of growth of root zones underneath. And what's also nice is that it puts out a lot of thatch after that corn silage is gone and you're going into winter. So that's going to continuously feed your biology. So that's another one that's got me intrigued because it would be very affordable. It'd be anywhere between like $1.25 per pound. So doing 5 pounds an acre of that is kind of like that's a no-brainer to me, doing something like that. So,
Matt, do you have any experience with chemicals prior to interseeding?
yeah, so the chemical industry is trying their darndest now, trying to come up with like a better mode of application for cover crop safe applications. But right now, the safest one is Verdict, the BASF product. That's got a very low residual. So it only lasts like a few weeks. That's why that's a cover crop safe one. But that's where that comes into timing. So when you use that Verdict, and let's say you do Verdict and Power Max, and you have your burn down heightened, and then you have your little bit of residual, so it gives you like a few weeks window to do that interseeding later. That's pretty much the safest bet. I've had people do it where they just did glyphosate or Power Max and they just did a burn down and then they quickly went out there. But the people who use that chemical system and they do their interseeding sooner rather than later, they'll maximize on that because by the time the weeds want to start popping out of the ground, that interseeding will already have like 1.5 inches to 3 inches of growth and it'll start smothering stuff out. But if you wait till like V4, V5, then you already have Pennsylvania smartweed, lamb's quarter, waterhead. You got that stuff shooting out of the ground already. And then it will cause some very sparse growth of your interseeding. And then your fall panicum, barnyard grass will all just come roaring back through. But yeah, Verdict isn't the silver bullet. It definitely has its flaws, but it's the absolute best pre-emergent system that's out right now.
Now, as far as yields on corn, after having that cover crop competition so-called with the corn, what reduction have you heard or seen or?
None. I haven't had anybody tell me like, I'm never doing this again because I had X amount of bushel loss. People who do it, they don't see any kind of tonnage loss. They don't see any kind of bushel loss. But the one thing that they'll always say, and that's why they do it again the next year, is they'll say, I can't believe how stable my field was. I had my chopper boxes out there. I had my combine out there. I wasn't sinking in. I roared out of the field and I roared right back off. And the next thing they'll say is that next spring, I didn't have any standing water. I didn't have any mud holes. I was able to get out there and maximize my time. I guess that would be the biggest thing is that draws people that first year they see their interseeding. This is because of those main functions there. But no, I'm sure somebody could find something from years back that says like, oh, there's a 5 bushel yield loss. But at this point, these last 5 years, there hasn't been any.
There's a question from our virtual audience.
From the comforts of their own home.
Yes. The question is, if you're looking to graze or harvest your cover crops as forage, how does that affect your seeding rates or herbicide plan?
Herbicide plan, not so much, but your seeding rate, you want to drive it up. So right now, there's a gentleman in Marathon City, so that's, well away from here, but that's in dairy country, but he has beefers. And 2 years, he's interseeded corn and he'll chop the silage and then he lets his beefers go out there and he'll do temporary fencing. And his rates, we don't go anything under 28 pounds to the acre. Generally, you want to do 30 to 35 pounds. But a lot of that poundage is coming from the oats that you throw into it and adding a little bit of extra brassica to it. Now, the oats will turn into straw, and that's what it's at right now. But by having 3 pounds of brassicas or 5 pounds of total brassica in that mix, you're basically sprinkling Doritos around a vegetable bowl to make your kids eat them. So those cows will lap all that up because they want to eat that brassica so bad they don't care what's around it. So that's how you sneak that in. So generally, if you're going to do like a grazing one, I would do 20 to 30 pounds of oats. I would have a combination of 3 different brassicas that will add up to 3 to 5 pounds. Have a sprinkle of maybe crimson and maybe some medium red in there as well. And for annual ryegrass, not so much. Maybe like 2 to 3 pounds.
Are they focusing their seeds per square foot ever?
There's some that will, but that kind of goes out the door when it's a broadcasting scheme because a lot of times you'll have major washouts. So that average of what you're getting per square foot kind of goes out the window. Now, guys that are doing like mechanically driven interseeding, then you can. So that's why I say that you can have those seeding rates lowered in an interseeding. So like in that same forage system, if that guy's doing that, he probably could do like a total rate of like maybe 20 pounds if he's mechanically applying it. But I wouldn't go any lower than that. If anything, you want to keep that up so that you have plenty of forage out there and you can keep those animals out.
Good, thanks.
Thumbs up right there. Excellent question. And sunflowers. Don't be afraid to do sunflowers. Beavers love sunflowers. Anything else?
Pat, can you maybe just talk a little bit about how when it gets dry or wet and how that affects
That comes from that's why, yeah, like if you do like an aggressive, like an HPPD pre-emergent spray and it gets wet and that reactivates and it stays out there longer, that's why you want to avoid those altogether because then your interseeding will get this big, it'll turn white and it just disappears. But then for the part that gets too dry, that's a major challenge for like all of us. Like this year was unique by us because we only had it where instead of getting dumped with rain every other day, we were only getting rain once a week. So there were some species that you could tell that were getting kind of stressed out from the heat, but that's where having a diverse mix becomes really important. So meaning if I feel like I want to hedge my bets and I want to have a drought resistance interseeding mix, then I am weighing on my brassicas and I'm also adding cowpeas to it because cowpeas are a Georgia plant. They love that heat. So that's something that's not going to wilt in the major heat. And that also comes into like the more species that you have out there, they'll start having better water holding capacity and they'll be able to resist that drought better. The very worst thing you could do is pick 2 things or 1 thing, like let's say 8 pounds of tillage radish, and that's your interseeding. That's the absolute worst thing you can do because you don't know if you're gonna have a dry spell or it's gonna get too wet or if something's gonna roll in and chew those all to bits. That's why you wanna have at least 3 things, at least 3 species in your mix. I usually like to go 6, and that's my number. Some people go 8, 10, or 12, just so they can hedge all their bets so that that interseeding is ready for any possible scenario. Does that answer your question? No tiller in the back.
Yeah, so with the drone, I started looking for seeds that have a low seeding rate and are dense.
Oh, so you can cover more acres.
Right, and there's pretty much no grass. You know, annual ryegrass is lower seed, kind of a lower seeding rate, but fluff, I can't get
It is.
in there. So if I was going to interseed early, something like that, what would be a mix on grass that would be?
And this is just like a general, like this is field corn, or would this be silage?
Matt,
Oh,
will you
field-
repeat his question before you answer it?
I will try. He's like,
Yeah.
hey, I got a drone, and I don't want to do annual ryegrass. I want to have something smooth that flows out of there. And if I would apply it early, what would I be looking at? Right? Paraphrasing? I guess what I would do is I would focus on your 7 tops, your smaller marble size seed. So that's your 7 top turnips. That's your dwarf Essex rape and your trophy rape and a low rate of tillage radish. Now the reason I picked those 3 is because if this is a field corn scenario, you don't want to have something that's got spindly growth like ryegrass, something that could get, you know, smushed by all that field corn after they combine it. By having tubers and brassica, something that has more rigidity and can stand in the colder temperatures, even through as the snow is flying, they'll stay standing. That'll help keep that cover crop from getting smothered out. Plus, that's going to be lower seeding rates for you. So, like you're looking at like 1 to 2 pounds here and there, 1/4 pound to a 1/2 pound on stuff. You know, like on the 7 tops, it's super small, so you can do like a 1/4 pound up to 1 pound. On dwarf Essex rape, you're looking at like a 1/2 pound to 1 pound. And then for the other filler, you would have, you know, your crimson clover, and I would even say that field corn guys should try medium red. That's a smaller clover, and there's nothing wrong with having a living cover out there, especially if it's at a lower seeding rate of like 3 pounds.
Okay. So I've tried all of those this fall because I just got it this summer.
Uh-huh.
And one, have you ever heard of Venture Marina?
I have.
Yeah. So that one is like real low seeding rate. It's like 3, like full seeding rate.
Well, it's like dust.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to be spreading out here actually today to try. But so I'm spreading it like 4 or 5 pounds, and
Ooh.
I can cover a lot of acres, you know, because I can fit a lot of it in the tank.
Are you going to be adding stuff to that?
Most of the stuff I spread was mixes, but then I got individual bags of everything that I tried too. So, but that's all I was going to spread out too.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. What I would almost challenge you to do is do a pass, because you're doing passes in this test trial here, right?
Yeah.
I would do a pass of that straight, and then I would do a pass of where you sprinkle in maybe, even if it's like less than a 1/4 pound, add 2 other elements to it, and then almost I would say that you might see a difference in overall growth between those. That was something I would challenge you to do.
Do you have any experience with that? It's supposed to overwinter here.
Hardcore.
Yeah, it does.
That's why I don't really get a whole lot of people chopping at the bit, because right now people want to have just enough stuff out there for a spring green effect, and most of the time they're relying on, you know, like a little bit of like it's not really brassicas because those will disappear. Most of it is like medium red, and some of that 7 top, some of that will survive, and some of the crimson, because they don't want to have something that's super hardy in a wintertime. And that's something that I've been asking about that, but just because of that aspect, everybody kind of shies away from it. But if somebody wants to push the envelope, like, I want spring green, I want something green to till into, that's a good one to pick. Does that answer your question? How much flight do you get on those batteries on that?
About 15 minutes, depending on how much you put in there.
Right.
And, so it depends on the seeding rate. 2.5
Yeah, then you want to stick to the like smoother, rounder stuff so it flows out of there better. And the only other thing you could do is like if you really wanted to have the annual ryegrass, they do make it coated. So you lose maybe like 20% of it because, or 30% of it in a bag because of the coating. But it has like that chalkiness to it that it'll catch to the other seeds and it'll blast out of there.
So I just looked at seed densities, you know, to guess how much we put in there, and it was about right with the legumes and the grass. And I didn't try annual ryegrass, but it would only be like 11 pounds.
Yeah.
It was so light. So
Yeah.
it's really nice. I might try some.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Thumbs up. I'll stop talking. You're done. Well, if you have any other questions for me, I'll be hanging around for quite a bit. And yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Matt. I do have to bring up here. So like I mentioned earlier, we have such a great support team here. But we do also get sponsors and mentioned some of the sponsors already. But I just want to go through the list because we were going to have one of these events indoors this last early spring, and we had sponsorship, and that event did not happen because of COVID. Matter of fact, it was scheduled the week it hit. So that's why we're doing more of these field events. But I just want to go through the list. B&B Ag Sales and Service, they're here today. Trumbull County Farm Bureau, Tractor Central, Allied Co-op, Lacrosse Seed, Buck Country Grain, Compeer Financial, let's see here, Cumral's Sales and Service, Integrity Ag, Countryside, D&D Farm Supply, Value Implement, Lindstrom Implement, Lacrosse Milling Company. So as you can see, we have great support, great sponsorship. This is above and beyond the support we get from just the local community, other than.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a long list.
Very long list. So very awesome. And of course, I mentioned earlier, Fenning Equipment, seeing they're leaving their seeder for us. That's a major sponsor as well. So thanks again for making the journey, everybody here today. I mean, you just look around and what a great turnout. So with that, I think we'll just dive into demoing. I mean, and we have snacks. You know, some of the sponsorship goes to pay for the meal. Where there's no meal today, but there's egg, chips, granola bars, water. Help yourself. And stick around, ask questions. Yeah, ask questions. That's what this is all about. Why reinvent the wheel? So
Yeah, especially.
I think what we're going to do then is start doing some seeding. Just got to figure out the game plan, how we're going to strip it, and go from there. So. All right. I don't think we need this anymore. Do you want to start with?
Oh my gosh. I did actually. Yeah.
Hey everyone listening virtually. If you'd like to see the equipment demos, will you please say that in the chat? Otherwise, if no one wants to watch that, we might end the video, but we'll gladly keep it on for those of you who are interested in watching some of the equipment work. So just type in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. I'll listen for a second.
No, we were just right at this cutoff, so that's where we came.
Got a yes, please. Okay, well, we'll keep it on for a little bit for the demo. Yeah, I might just, yeah, you can type questions in the chat still for us. Otherwise, it might be kind of hard to hear, but we'll keep the video on and keep the recording going. I'm going to shut my video off for just a minute, and then we'll be back when they start up the equipment. You can see the drones out there right now.
It'll take off and land by itself, but the elevation it doesn't do by itself, which is easy when it's flat like this. When you're in the hills, I'm paying attention. And it's supposed to be line of sight. I haven't lost connection yet. So like if I got a hill in my way, I've just been flying really high on the other side of the hill. So I'm not sure how that happens. Right. Right. There, you know. Yeah. Right. Or make points. The screen is there. Right now I'm like 25 feet, and in the hills, I went up 8 feet. This seat is really small too. Yeah, it's been seating this way. When it comes, it's gonna go down and back twice. So when it comes here, you'll see it shut the spinner off, and when it turns and it starts up again, you'll see it. Yeah, I know. Other people have. Right, yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, I've tried to do a test. It's hard, downdraft, but I know when I fly it over the top, it's as far as some seats, people fly. I might be a little bit. It would be a lot faster if I had to. And it depends on what the scenery is. Like with this, I will change the batteries every month. But like that's like acres and a half acres. I can put like an acre and a half. legs broke. It ran out of battery right down into the better than corn. I've been so far. I've been staying, but I haven't been all the way up. The Google Maps are like a few years old. Harder than they did. Learn how to use your stuff.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It wouldn't need too much sand.
Oh yeah.
You do it from the living room.
Yeah.
And this cover crop on the garden now.
But it was for the same product. Companies that you can like
He's got a home button, so he just says home and then it comes back to him. You just have to leave the door open of the house and it'll come right to the house.
Can we see what's on the screen?
you can see it. It's so there's a strip that's 80 feet wide.
So you're doing 2 passes?
Yep. So let's turn around on that end.
So how did you have to set this up?
Just from Google Maps here, I looked at it, I put the dots, and then it brings up the pattern, and I can move it back and forth and make it wider or narrower or whatever.
Cool. And can you say again what you're putting down?
This is winter camelina. It's a oil seed brassica. It's got a really low seeding rate, and it's supposed to be really winter hardy. So there's a lot of, the U of M did a bunch of research with it as an oil crop. So.
Sweet.
So I'm gonna mark it and he's gonna spread next.
Yep, sounds good.
You should be safe.
Yeah, I'm flying high enough.
This battery lasts about 45 minutes, so. And if there's a strong wind, you gotta account for the wind because it uses more battery. How about that?
No, I do. I got it late season. I didn't get it. That's not perfect. Don't have it's actually
We put these shields on just the other day because Brian was going to run this thing and stand in soybeans. So we put them shields on up front to protect the soybeans. That's what's pushing us. Like Brian's fault. That's why we put the shields on.
We're able to see this.
Okay, gotcha.
Thanks for.
I think we should.
Get on.
Well, what was the idea that you were thinking?
To do this and then come back next year, plant your bean, or take it off, run it here.
Run this here.
Yep. And then come back and plant your beans there. And use that group.
Yep.
What if you're gonna be able to?
I'd be curious to ask him what it looks like over these stocks.
Yep. When we were talking about this at that cover crop meeting, you probably saw it or any pictures of it. I was like, okay, I use this mine all that kind of one. Why can't we run that right on the front?
The baby one.
Okay, I think that's all for the demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Thanks everyone for watching. If you missed part of it, we'll post the recording on the Discovery Farms Facebook page later on this week. So thanks everyone.